Hello there, and today on The Fan Awakens, we're talking about comics, Marvel, Star Wars issue number 6. So this is what I understand is the end of the first, 6-issue, arc, and it definitely feels like that. It reminds me of, a television series where, you can tell it's still an ongoing series, but you have sort of a closure moment that kind of wraps up that season in particular. And this definitely had that. It had sort of a big moment that was like a big final moment that really capped off the first arc, first segment of the whole thing. And then it also had like a cliffhanger, let's keep you coming back for more kind of moment. So it really had that television feel to it, which I thought was really sort of interesting as somebody who watches a lot of television but hasn't read a lot of comics. Alright, so first the cliffhanger moment. In the early part of this series, our main characters, basic main Star Wars characters, Han, Leia, Luke, Chewie, were all in one place, and Darth Vader showed up in that place as well. But after about the third episode, they kind of split off and went their separate ways. And it really got interesting after they split up. One of the things was I was much more interested in where Luke went and what Darth Vader was doing in terms of searching for Luke, and the part with Princess Leia and Han Solo didn't really interest me quite as much. So here again, even in this story, as I turned the page from Luke and it went over to the Han and Leia part of it, I gave a little groan. I was like, okay, where's this going? And it's not that it's not interesting. It is, but it's just not as interesting as what was going on with Luke Skywalker until it got real interesting. Yes, so Han Solo has a wife. That was big. That was a pretty big deal. This came out of nowhere, and it totally shakes up, what we think about Star Wars. I mean, what we think about the movies, and how we look at those things. I mean, if we were to accept this as a canon thing, when we watch the movies, we're going to be like, whoa, he's married, and what does that mean for everything? The best thing about this, though, really, is that it shows that the story group and the Marvel writers are willing to go for it. They're not playing it safe. It could have been they probably could have played pretty conservatively and not had any major things like this and gotten away with it. It reminds me a little bit of the prequels and George Lucas. I mean, he could have played that safe, as well, and probably done just fine. But he wanted to tell an interesting story and didn't mind having you sort of re-examine what you already thought. And I think that's a good attitude to have. I mean, it seems like the story groups is saying here, if we're going to do this, it's not going to be frivolous, and I definitely like that. So the other main story here is much more satisfying, though. This is sort of the season ender. We finally get to find out how Darth Vader found out he had a son. We know he sees this in the movies. We know he sees this force is strong with this one kid, and and by the beginning of Empire Strikes Back, he knows he has a son. It tells us in the opening crawl, it tells us in the conversation with the Emperor. So yeah, I've always wondered. It's been 35 years. I've always kind of wondered, well, how did he find that out? And now we know. I mean, it's Boba Fett. Boba Fett. It's Boba Fett. And yeah, I think that's cool. I mean, that's really, really exciting. I really like, again, how the story group is saying, we're not afraid. We're not afraid to give you these big moments. These are not off-screen side adventures that can they go in and get out? Can they get in and get out of those adventures without disrupting what we already know in the story? I mean, this is game-changing stuff where you accept it into your own sort of head as the way it happened, and then you see Boba Fett and Darth Vader talking on screen, and you're going to be like, man, I remember them. They have history, and now I know what that history is like. And that's gutsy, and I really, really dig that. So this was great. I mean, this was really, really awesome in terms of storytelling, in terms of how it affects the Star Wars universe as a whole. In the end, I mean, this whole arc, this whole thing was really good, and I mean, in another example of them pushing it, I mean, early on, we saw that Luke Skywalker and Darth Vader had a confrontation, a meeting early on, and that's very different than what we expected, and I wasn't sure how I felt about that. right away. But I'm accepting, I'm interested in it, and we'll see. When I next watch the movie, if it feels like it fits. I mean, I respect that they're being very careful with that kind of thing, so they don't do that. They don't do that just willy nilly. I know that they think about that a lot. So I think it's really exciting that they're willing to push it like this hard and really attempt to like give us some juicy stories that matter. I think if these were all just sort of side adventures, that ultimately could be thrown out if you wanted to, and or not make any difference, I think it wouldn't be as compelling, and me, as somebody who doesn't typically read comic books, probably wouldn't remain interested to the degree that I am. But now I am hooked. I'm definitely hooked into this series. I really can't wait to see what comes next. Yeah, so I think keep them coming back for more, right? The fact that I can't wait to see what happens next, to see what they'll do next, is got to be a big compliment, or at least it's got to be what they're looking for or what they were hoping for. So yeah, so I would say, just well done for the first the first chunk of Star Wars mainline Star Wars comics. That's it for today. We'll get back to you with more comic book reviews and more of other searches into fandom. And until then, may the Force be with you.